We're going to record because Bobby's not on, and we'll take it from there. Okay, let's read. So we'll set it up. We don't need much of the setup. We kind of know the story. Haman cannot deal with the fact that Mordechai every day will not bow before him, and he can't take it, right? So we'll pick it up in pasuk vav. Vayivez be'einav lishloach yad Mordechai levado, and it was beneath him in his eyes to send forth his hand against Mordechai alone. Ki gidu lo etam Mordechai, because they had told him about who Mordechai's people were. So therefore, that's so there's not to analyze there, but that's our focus right now. Vayivakesh Haman lahashmid kol hayudim. So Haman sought to destroy all the Jews, asher b'chol malchut Achashverosh, in all of the provinces of Achashverosh, Am Mordechai, Mordechai's nation. I'll go after all of them, seemingly the hatred, all because of Mordechai. Okay. B'chodesh harishon hu chodesh Nisan, on the new moon of the first month, which is Nisan. This is, by the way, where suddenly these are names of months. Tell me about names of months. Do we know Nisan otherwise? These months in the Torah?
The first, they do them by numbers.
The Torah, Chodesh Harishon is how we would refer to the month, right? But Nisan, Chodesh Nisan is a Babylonian name. And so, it's here we see it being incorporated into our biblical text, right? Bishnat Shnei Misrei L'Melech Achashverosh, the 12th year of Achashverosh's reign. He peel poor Hu Hagaral. So just understand, the first chapter happens in the 3rd year of his reign. Vashti is done away with, and then period of time passes, we don't know how long, and then like a year of the whole search for the bride. So let's say you get to year 5, I don't know, of his reign. So this happened 7 years later, this storyline. So there's a long time that Esther has been in the royal house with no job to do for us. It's a long time to be planted there. We'll talk about being planted in another minute, okay? So on the 12th year, on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, he peeled Pur HaGoral. He drew the lottery, which is the Goral, Lifnei Haman, before Haman, Miyom Liyom, Mechodesh LaChodesh, Shnei Masar, Hu Chodesh Adar. And it basically says he did a series of draws until it came up with for the heavenly sign that he was looking for, Chodesh Adar. That's the month. That's the month I want. Okay, having chosen the month, he now wants to get authority. Why? How can he come to whenever he wants to talk to Achashverosh? Right. We think of the story of Esther having to about a whole plot about not being called, and if I show up without being called, he might kill me. So what does this show you about Haman's place, Rafi?
That authority.
He has right in there, right? He's right in there so maybe it could be that advisors are right in there, but queens are not right in there. It's very possible that's the case. No, the women don't play the close role, but he can walk in when he wants to. So he says to Achashverosh, the king, Yesh no amachad, there is a certain people, mefuzar mefarad bein ha'amim, which is all dispersed and spread out amongst the nations. B'chol medinot malchutecha, and all of the provinces of your reign. V'datehem shon of your empire. V'datehem shonot mikolam, and their laws are different from all nations. V'datehem melachim amosim, and the laws of the king they do not perform. V'lamelach ein shaveh lahanicham, and it is not worth it to the king lahanicham, to leave them. So firstly, what's the basic claim about us?
About us as the Jews?
Yeah.
It just lo mafria. No, that's Meforad.
So we
I don't know. I was just thinking that.
Mefuzar meforad, right? We are all spread out. And we have different laws, and we don't follow the king's laws. So, like, what point is he making?
They're a threat.
We are a threat. We're like 0.000 something of the kingdom. Let's presume. I'm making up. I'm presuming that's the percentages. But you can't ignore us. Don't ignore the Jews, because we pose the threat. Wherein is our threat? How do you know we're a threat?
Different laws.
We have different laws than all the other peoples. Okay, we don't know, we kind of know what that means exactly, but we don't fit in. And we don't do the king's laws. What does it mean? What does it mean not to do the king's laws? What's the accusation then?
Are we already up to the point where Mordechai has not bowed down to him?
Yes, that's already done. So that could, in his head, that's all he's thinking about. The king's, even though the king never said bow down to Haman, but he has the authority to have people bow down to him. So that could be where he's coming from. But for the king, what does he want to imply? The Jews are doing what? They're
rebelling.
Right on red with at a sign that says no right turn on red. And what do we mean they don't follow the king's laws? It's amorphous, right? It's just left to hang. What do we mean by that? Are we actually not paying taxes? Are we sticking it every time we see a policeman and the policeman tells us to do something, we laugh at him? Is that what image is he creating here? I don't know. It's just the canard is we ignore the king's laws. Now, lahavdil, not so much lahavdil. So we know that in certain Jewish cultures, this has been a problem for us, where Jews don't hold in high regard the rules of the land in which they live. Right? They ignore the rules of the land. They might not pay their taxes. Find ways to avoid paying taxes and otherwise do all manner of things which are not really legal. And that comes from where?
So I actually had a friend of mine in Israel who he had a call with a competitor who wasn't paying taxes. And I asked him this very question. I said, why is it that even in Israel, people are trying to skirt it? So he said, I mean, his view is that for most of history, the governments where Jews lived were instruments of repression and degradation for the Jews, right? They weren't fair to the Jews. And so anytime the Jew could go stick it to the government was seen as, culturally as a good thing. And he said, even when we have our own state, it still carries through.
So first, so number one, right? So there's a mitzvah. You're obligated to follow the law of the land. But if it's a malchus harisha, if it's a wicked kingdom, so then you can avoid and fight it as much as you can, although it might not be wise, right? But you don't have to carry with you the sense of being compelled. Right, and I'll go a little further, Mick, and they would, and at least amongst certain circles in that world, they might have seen the state of Israel as an enemy because they were trying to force secularism on those communities. Simon, welcome.
Well, I'm so sorry, Rabbi Mata. I only tuned in because I heard that you were giving a heads and not to pay taxes. Is that?
Somehow that's kind of this used to be where Simon, your audio is a little bit flaky, so just be conscious of that. I don't know if you can work on that. So fine. So the canard here is the Jews don't follow your laws, which means that they hold you in disregard. That for a king who is quite fragile and needy and constantly feeling threatened, so that by implication makes them a threat to him, just by that in and of itself. But also this spread out everywhere, and they're not like anybody else. Let's pause there for 1 second. What just happened here? Hold on a second. My son, hold on a second. I gotta tell him. I pause. I'm gonna pause you for a second. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Pause you one part. So, the Megillah makes sure to tell us. Megillah makes sure to tell us that Achashverosh reigns over what?
27 provinces.
He reigns over 127 provinces, right? From Hodu to Kush, India to Ethiopia. That means all of Arabia in between, the Levant, Turkey, Egypt, down to Ethiopia. Fine, that's it. So tell me, is this a very unified kingdom? Is everybody similar to one another? So would you say of one province to the next that their practices are different than everybody else's? I would have said yes. But I guess what he's saying is wherever the Jews are, they're still different from the place where they are. So they simply do not fit. And I'm going to tell you a version of the story that my housekeeper told Susie on Thursday, my housekeeper who's from Ukraine. She said the following story that she heard from her family in their village in Ukraine. You know, how much of it's broken telephone, I don't know, but this is what she claimed. They arrested a 17-year-old boy who was making markings on a number of public buildings and private buildings as well, which they found to be quite suspicious, and they arrested him for doing it. Did it like last week. And under the questioning, he told them that he was actually paid by the Russians to mark buildings for them when they would come through the village, I guess, and so they would know where to go, like the lahavdil of the Jews marking their houses in Egypt. So God would skip their houses. It was like these are the houses, the target houses. And he said, this is how she framed it, that they started paying him 2 years ago. Put him on their payroll 2 years ago to do this. And basically means that since he was 15, they took a kid, right? And they said, well, like, when the day comes of the invasion, right, you'll know, make sure that you do these things. It's like, first to let you know how long this has been planned, if that's true. Again, I don't know the story. I'm going to tell you that's how we received it from her, who's from her family, who's it from this kid. But the suggestion that there are people who live amongst you who you can trust, especially if you can identify them as other, and they don't really respect you, so then they pose, they are sleeper cells posing a mortal threat for whatever supposedly will threaten you. So that's what Haman was able to bubble up here to a man who was quite paranoid, and so all he has to say. It's not even like, let's go kill him. Ein shaveh hanicham is this fascinating way of saying, like, it's not worth it for you to, I don't know, if you were a mafioso, I'm just imagining, right? I don't know, it's not worth it for them to, to be around, you know what I'm saying? So that's what's happened here. Ein shaveh hanicham, he gets the message across pretty clearly. Welcome, Bobby.
Thank you. He knew it
So-
wasn't my father.
Hold on. So you missed a good story that I was telling. Okay. So it says, don't trust them. They're different from everybody else. They can't be trusted. And so therefore I plant the seed. Im al melech tov, if it is good upon the king, yikatev la'abadam, let it be written to destroy them. So that phrase, Im al melech tov, I wonder, it has one of two possibilities. Either this is the formula that's always used when speaking to the king, when you're giving advice, that you don't give outright advice, you always have to couch it this way, or it's psychological astuteness for dealing with a certain type of human being to always let him believe that it's going to be his idea. if it's good for the king, yes, it's the king's good idea, right? He says, plants it over to him. Yikatev Abadam, let it be written to destroy them. But Aseret Alfim Kikar Kesev, and 10,000 talents of silver. Eshkol al Yedei Oseh HaMelacha, I will pay out through Oseh HaMelacha, which is interesting how it's interpreted to what that phrase means exactly, but through the people who are managing your affairs, Lavi El Ginzeh HaMelech, to bring to the king's treasury. Well, what does this mean? Does somebody explain to me the pasuk? I'll read it again. If it's good for the king, let it be written to destroy them, and 10,000 talents of silver I will pay out to these middlemen to bring to the king's treasury. Translation?
They want to hire mercenaries?
I don't think so.
No, he's paying to kill them.
This is straightforward bribery, corruption, right?
Yeah.
King, I have an idea. It's clearly my idea. I'd like it to be your idea, and to me to help ensure that it happens, I'm going to pay you money. It's going to go to Ginzeh HaMelech, to the king's treasury, and watch what happens in the next pasuk. The king gives him his signet. We'll talk about it in a second. The money is given to you. And the people to do as you wish. I think that here is exactly what you were saying, Alex. There is a budget that has to be, employed for carrying out this plot to kill these Jews. Although he never mentioned that they're Jews, by the way, never told them who they are. The people, okay, Ha'am, whoever they are. So how does it work? Haman says, I'll give you money into your Ginzeh HaMelech, and the king gives him money from where?
People.
From the national treasury, right?
It's coffers.
Not from. So private donation to me, public donation to you, to your effort.
He gets a tax write-off and you know
Tax
what?
write-off, everybody's at Shalom Yisrael. Okay, so although not Shalom Yisrael in the story. So that's the plan. So he offers the bribe, meaning that the king doesn't, in case I haven't convinced you of the mortal threat these people are posing, who I haven't even identified, right? So it's clear that I want freedom to do whatever I want here, Mr. King. And so here's some money to make it worth your while, which he simply says, thank you. It'll go through the third party. And by Yasar, Hamelcha tabato me'al yado, and the king took off his ring and he gave it to Haman. What are we talking about? We're talking about a ring. Hold on.
Signet ring.
Seal.
Ring. Yes, so here is Tabat Chotam Achimanit. So I don't know. It was one of those guys, okay, in that period. So what does a signet ring do?
It signs wax.
A signature.
Right. You take it and you either put it into wax. Sometimes they were wax seals, and otherwise they were clay seals. And so the wax cools and the clay dries, and not like what from like we imagine in 1776, where somehow we imagine that they did on the bottom of the Declaration of Independence, which I don't think they did actually. Right. It was generally done if you had a scroll. Sometimes it was on, but let's presume you had a scroll, so you had a tie around the scroll, and then you wax sealed over the tie, the knot or whatever it was to keep it in place, and that means that until that is broken, you can be sure that whoever's signet is in that is the one who provided you this document, right? So you can be sure the king provided this document when, of course, in fact, the king did not make this document, but he gave Haman the ability to use it freely. So this is my my wedding band. Susie has a wedding band. Is now she lost two of them. I hope she doesn't mind. I should probably not record, but okay. So she lost two of her wedding bands over the course of time. She has a beautiful, nice wedding band and with diamonds in it. Also, I got that for our 25th wedding. And she still has it that many years now. That's good. So, and we all can blame the Tilas Yadayim for wedding bands being lost. Because once you get into practice of taking it off for that, then it gets lost. Fine. So she lost the ring, like a ring, and I wanted her to be able to still wear something. So I gave her my signet ring. I have since at my bar mitzvah, I got a KM signet ring.
Keith Barter.
For Keith Martyr, right? So so she wore my KM ring for a while until we ended up getting her another wedding band. So I realized that in that simple loving act of giving her my signet ring was, of course, you know, a dangerous thing for me to have done, because she could use it to carry out all types of things in my name. Thankfully, it didn't happen. The truth is, signet rings as we have them don't make sense, because people, if you see something and you see their initials on it, you can read their initials. If you can read their initials, then you know it's not really a signet ring. Why?
This is reversed.
It's reversed.
Should be reversed.
So you need to have something which is not legible, and you put it in the wax. You can read it in the wax. So fine, okay, fine. So so he gives Haman his signet ring, and so now
Can we just talk for a second? Why is it that he's so willing to act so quickly after hearing this?
why is
Without any explanation, Achashverosh? Or that was enough. He made his case. They're subversive. There's this insidious threat, and that's it. Here's my ring. Go do. Here's the financial terms.
so what would you say?
I mean, he's an impressionable guy. I missed your drasha on this, but
So either right, good, but it's either the fact that he is completely malleable and maneuvered by people easily. And for now, it's Haman who's got the full grip over him in any way, right? Or it's what the pasuk describes happened here at the table, which was 10,000 talents of silver are going through a middleman into your coffers, and so he's a very corrupt man.
and he doesn't know who the target is, right?
He doesn't even know the target is. So
Yeah, is that true though, Rabbi Mada? If you think about the geography of Persia as you described it, how
Yeah.
many other peoples were Mufuzar ben Kolamim? Do you think there were there others who were Mufuzar ben Kolamim like you just described, or did he know?
I don't
who
know,
it was?
right? You're possibly right, and it probably would not have taken him long if he sat down and tried to say, well, who is he referring to? And he said, and he spent a little time thinking about it. But it sounds like he's not curious at all, right? And he just right? So the point almost made is that does he know if he knows who the Jews are not? It's like, it's irrelevant to him how easily he's ready to take someone's statement of flippantly saying "Ein shaveh lahanicham" about any human being, right? It's not worth it to keep them around. No case can be made for somebody at all. It's like Ein shaveh. Human life is really quite insignificant in that phrase and how it is accepted. So, and so that's how it happens here. He gives him his ring. Now, how long does Haman have his ring? For the purposes of what's going to transpire, how long does he need his ring?
Just long enough to make the
edict.
for the Jews.
Correct. It's Rosh Chodesh. It's Rosh Chodesh Nisan. By the time you get to Esther comes to Achashverosh to plead for the Jews after fasting 3 days. That's on Pesach, we're told. It happens on Pesach. So the word is already gone out between Rosh Chodesh Nisan and the time she gets there for 2 weeks. It's going out very quickly. So the ring he should have, use it, and then presumably give him back. So let's go back to let's skip ahead to chapter 8. And I never noticed it until I was preparing this year today. So let's take a look. So in chapter 8, Esther says, Haman ben Hammedatha, right? He's the one, right, who was trying to kill me, who wants to kill my people. And the king says, you also want to conquer my wife in front of me. And then Chavorna says, look at the gallows, the tree is waiting for someone to hang on it, and poof, boom. That he's taken to be hung. This is happening I don't know, somewhere in later in Nisan, it seems, right? Bayomahu, Natana Melech Achashverosh Esther Malkat Beit Haman Tzver Yudim Mordechai Ba Lifnei Melech Yigid Esther Mahula. So on that day, the king Achashverosh gave Esther, the queen, a house of Haman, the tormentor of the Jews. And Mordechai now came before the king because Esther told him who he was to her. Think about it. Has Mordechai ever met the king?
No.
It's heard about him, but
Yeah. Mordechai saved his life.
right, and he made him a parade.
So he saved his life by whispering sending a message to Esther about the plot, but he never met him right then. And later on, he can't sleep, and he reads the Chronicles. Oh, what was done for that person? Nothing. And Mordechai and Haman comes in, right? And then and Haman, says, take the person who the king wants to honor and bring him on the horse, and says, go do it for Mordechai the Yehudi. And so Haman goes and does it for Mordechai Yehudi, and he wearing the royal garb. Where's the king? I don't know. He never meets the guy. He's never met him. Even though we have a sense that he's actually somehow some level of advisor to the king, because he's hanging around the Sha'ar HaMelech all the time in the entryway to the gateway where royal business is being done. You have lots of advisors who never meet the king. That's how it seems. Finally, he's brought in, and Mordechai and Esther told everything who he was. Hey, he's my uncle. Hey, everything. Vayasar HaMelech tabato asher ha'avir me Haman vayitna Mordechai. And the king removed his ring, which he had taken off, transferred from Haman vayitna Mordechai, and he gave it to Mordechai. Sounds like it wasn't until this party when he's going to be and where she's Jacques Hughes and when Haman is now exposed. And as he's being taken off to the gallows, the king says, 1 minute, right? Give me back my signet ring. Which means that, if Esther hadn't exposed him, Haman would have kept on having his ring. It seems the king, it's mind-blowing to imagine that possibility. But it seems that Asher Ha'avir Haman happened right then. Maybe you'll tell me it's not that, but it seems like it happened right then. And the king was so reckless with the codes to the nuclear, buttons, whatever, right? By letting this guy have them. Here's my ring. Keep the ring. Yeah, I'll get it back sometime. Do what you want to do with it. Like, oh my God, so irresponsible about the authority that he had let this man have, even beyond the specific narrow call of kill the Jews. And now what does he do with it?
Gives it to Mordechai.
He gives it to Mordechai. It's ridiculous. Don't give it to Mordechai. Keep it, king. Want to give Mordechai his own signet that has some, people know, okay, third level guy, second level guy, but the king's signet ring should never be on anybody else's finger than the king's. So it's just bizarre that this man who had been so paranoid about the levers of power, and we met in the first chapter, right, has somehow, either grown flippant about it, or is this unstable with it. I don't know. I just put it out there for you. So he gives him the ring, and he places Esther and Mordechai al Beit Haman, over the house of Haman. That's the dripping with irony, right? That yes, we don't need to spell it out. But Tosef Esther the Belifnei Melech, and now she continues. Where is this all happening?
In
King's
the
court.
palace.
And what? Well, it happens by Yom HaHu. So by Yom, let's look at the Megillah in a second. By Yom HaHu, here by Yom HaHu, let's go up one parak. Parak Zion. They hung Haman on the tree, and which was made from Mordechai, and the king's anger subsided. It was forgotten. By Yom HaHu, that very same day, all this happens. So the last place, where were we the last moment? In the end of chapter 7.
The party, yeah.
In Esther, right? We're in Esther's apartment, right? Whatever it was, her wing, whatever it was. So Bayam Hahu would have us imagine that things break up. He goes back. He's not still staying in the apartment anymore because they went and hung him, and it's now on that day. So is it back? Is he back in the royal chambers, or I don't know about Tosef Esther? Oh, no, let me do that. Forget that. We'll go back to our pasuk and said, but Tosef, and she continued and she spoke before the king. That gives you a sense that it's mamash still there in the apartment, and she has more to say to him. I don't know. Okay, but Tipolf Neraglav, and she falls before his feet. But Taif, I don't know, and she weeps and she pleads and beseeches him, La'avir ra'at aman hagagi ve'et machshavato asher chashab al yudim, to laha'avir, like he was ma'avir the ring, he should ma'avir the ra'ah. He should pull it, move away the evil of Haman and all his machshava that he chashab al yudim, his plan, his plot. I think the right means here the plan that he had about the Jews. So here she's falling at his feet. We got to deal with it, because here's the problem. You think it was all solved when I pointed to that guy, but the problem is
Plan's already in place.
the plan's in place. It lives beyond him. The danger still exists. The source of it, he's already weaponized his plan. So he sends his golden scepter to her, and she stands up before the king, and she says, but Tomer, Imal Melech Tov, she also uses that language. She used it before also. Everybody uses that language, Imal Melech Tov. Again, either because it's the official procedure you must use.
It works.
This is how you know to deal with the psychology of this guy. You got to make him think it's his, right? And if I found favor in his eyes, third person. And the matter is kasher before the king. That's a great use, right? The word kosher here is like the way we use it in regular parlance and not in the kashrus parlance. I don't know. This is anybody here? I see maybe somebody. And I remember the show Mannix from childhood. No, okay. So Mannix was like a private investigator, and he had Peggy. Peggy was his black assistant. And I remember one time, as a kid, she said to him, I don't know, Mannix, it doesn't seem kosher. And I was like, whoa, look at this. We've made it. We're Jews. We have a place in the world, because Peggy, the black assistant, says to the Gentile guy, doesn't think it's kosher. And then, of course, you have to remember, Peggy didn't say that. Who said it?
The writer.
The Jewish writers who put it in there, right? Okay, anyway. So v'chasher davar lifnei hamelech, and the matter is kasher before you. V'tovani ve'einav, and also that I am, you find me favorable, which says, yeah, I love you, honey. V'yikatev hashivet hasvarim machshevet Haman ben Hamadat Agagi. Let it be written to retrieve lahashiv, to retrieve the scrolls. Machshevet Haman ben Hamadata, which is like the living embodiment of Haman's evil plan. Asher katav la'abedet hayudim, who wrote to destroy the Jews, Asher b'chol medinot melech, in all of the provinces of the king. So what does she want? Lahashiv et hasfarim. And she says, how could I go on and see the evil that will befall my people? How can I go on and see the destruction of my origins? So what does it mean, lahashiv et hasfarim? That phrase. What is it that she's expecting or hoping?
To reverse the decree, or
so you're reading it.
take back the books.
It's a turn of the phrase. Let's go literal for a moment. Literal for the moment. Lahashiv barim would actually mean
To return the books.
go out, send out messengers to get every single one of those scrolls out of everybody's hands. Toot, right, give them back. So when the king says, everybody knows that that if the things are sent out, you can't, like, you just can't do that. It's gone. They're out there. How are you going to get every one of them? It's not possible. That's one possibility, right? So Bobby says it means something else, which is lahashiv, which means to retract,
Retrieve.
rescind, right? Not to retrieve, but to rescind them. So, which means that you need to issue a statement that says, forget what was written in those documents, right? That's what it would mean. So the king says, Achashverosh to Esther Malka, he speaks to both of them, because now Mordechai is her partner and everything. Now, Mordechai has always been a partner, but been hiding behind the scenes, is now out front, right? So he says, I might as well talk to you straight too. I've given Beit Haman to Esther. And he's now been hung. For having sent forth his hand against the Jews, which he actually has only started to and didn't succeed. So you guys, you can write what you want. And in my name, use my signet ring, flippant, right? I can't do what you asked. I can't rescind anything which was a document which was written in the name of the king and sealed with the signet of the king. It's not rescindable. So why is that? Again, if it's get back the documents, you're being naive. If it's come out with a public declaration that
shows weakness.
What's that, Rafi?
It shows weakness and
shows weakness. So one level is I can't admit a mistake. To rescind the document is to admit that I made an error. Now, I think Mama says, even if he would say, an evil, terrible man took my signet ring and issued a terrible, heinous plot against the beloved, nation of my beloved queen, right? Which he could have said, right? And therefore I declare it null and void. Ignore that statement because it was stolen. The ring was stolen. Basically, that's what he would have to say, something like that, to save face. But will you save face by saying that?
No, because they think you idiot. How did you let that happen?
Or
Your signet ring
cheapens it.
stays on your hand, right? And if people scratch below the surface, it'll turn out I gave him my ring. Oh, and why'd you give me a ring? So 10,000 talents of silver made it worth my while, right? You can't go there, right? So iron wall, I can't. So he'd be making this up. I never admit, and I don't admit this. And then Rafi more broadly says, I never say I'm sorry. I never say I made a mistake. We know plenty of people who've been in power who have that problem, and certain individuals even more specifically, right? And maybe even the president of Russia at this point, who will double down before he'll admit anything, right?
So, be careful, Rabbi Mana. There'll be an X on your house when you leave.
That's very possible. God forbid. So that's part number 2 in this. Part number 3 in this is a very reasonable public policy, national policy that you have to have when. How do you get a message out to the world? You make a scroll and then you put your signet on it and it goes out. And if you now say, forget that, then no documents will ever be
cheapens it.
enough to say, how do I know it hasn't been undone? So we have to have a policy that says we don't undo documents. Once it's done, it's done. Now, of course, that's generally meant to say, think very carefully and evenly before you send anything out, because it goes out, you can't take it back, right? And so that only reveals even further how horrifying the moment was when he says, yeah, sure, take my ring, right? Like, oh my God, like this is a recipe for disaster, not just about the Jews, but everything else someone might want to do. But
But why is this? But why is it different, Rabbi Mata, to the way that law and the execution of power works now? It's just it. So you write a law, you seal it, and then you need to send out another law that supersedes the law that was there before. That's how we practice law now.
so supersession will be our next step, okay? But to simply say cancel it, I can't do, right? And that's gonna be the next level, which
I
is
see.
they will send. But to cancel it, we don't cancel. I will give you one variation on this. So we have a rule that when a get is delivered, the Beit Din tries to demands of all the parties that were present there that no one will disparage the get. No one should disparage the get, because tomorrow any of the parties that were there say, you know what, it wasn't. I don't think it was done right. I didn't mean it. I was forced. There was coercion to it. Whatever it is. So we make an isser chamor on doing that, right? And you drive that point home, and at the giving of the get, there's an isser chamor to speak ill of a get for the same reasons, right? It's a document, it's a legal document. We don't want people to say the next day that legal document, maybe they didn't mean it. Mavato this. So we don't like bittul a get. There's a whole discussion. Can a person go into Beit Din? It's usually when you send a shliach to give a get. All right. And so then you can be mavato a get in Beis Din. It's a very dicey thing to do. The whole thing's very dicey because you want to be able to trust documents once they're out there for the world. So it's not an unreasonable position of the king to say, I can't take it back. But all it does is reveal just how flippant he was in the first place. We're going to stop here, and we will next week then continue with the Igeret that's sent, and we're going to actually see how the parallel and contrast with Haman's Igeret, and then played out in the ground as well. Okay, everyone. I hope we'll